Tell your mama, tell your papa, tell your sis, tell your miss, tell your brother, tell another, tell Paul, tell Saul, tell your dog, you tell them all. God is a good God, and He's a good God all the time. Hello, I'm Michael Brooks. Welcome to the network. Members only, My Corner. Today, let's talk about something that's very, very important and very, very necessary. And it's called making a decision. Making a decision. When you make a decision, exactly how important is that decision? Well, it determines that not only the outcome of that decision, but anything related to that decision. Such as, have you decided that God is your God? That God is your leader? That God is your boss? Well, once you make that decision, there's no turning back. There's a song called I Have Decided to Follow Jesus. And it goes something like, I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. And it's exactly that. No turning back. Now, when you encounter everything, it doesn't mean that you're decided to follow Jesus only in the big things of your life, but in all things of your life. Actually, when you follow God, the small things are the big things. And there's no turning back. When something happens in your daily life, something that is good to you, is good for you as you have determined it to be, or is not so good to you and is not so good for you as you have determined it to be. Well, when you decided to make God your boss, then God is the one that do the deciding whether it is good for you or not, and not you. In other words, let's say that along your path, you was blessed with a vision to see your path that leads right up to a cross. Can you imagine Jesus saying, wait a minute, I can see my path, and it's leading right to the cross. Now, what is the cross? Well, the cross was, if you think the electric chair is a bad symbol of today, well, the cross was 10 times, no, 100 times worse in the days of yesterday. The cross was not only so bad for the person who was facing to go on the cross, but the cross was so bad that it brought shame to you and everyone that knew you. Your whole family, your friends, your associates, anyone that had anything to do with you. The cross was so bad that it involved them as well and brought shame, unbearable shame, to all of them. Do you recall in the Bible when Jesus went to the cross, afterwards the people who was following him, to include his disciples, when they was asked, wait a minute, aren't you one of his disciples or followers, or I saw you talking with them? They denied it. I never knew the man. Recall? Well, that's because the burden was so bad that it was so shameful that none could bear it. It was too much for them to bear, too much of a weight to carry. Well, look at what God did. Suppose Jesus had decided not to go all the way to the cross because it was so bad. It was humiliating. It was shameful, not only for him, but anyone who was associated with him or anyone that knew him. Well, what would have happened? What do you think if there was no cross? Well, if Jesus had decided not to follow the cross, everything that transpired after the cross would never have transpired. See, when you and I determine that something is bad, that doesn't make it bad. That just The only thing that does is put a label on something that our
Virus
knowledge
database has been updated.
Our knowledge is very limited, and since our knowledge is not God's knowledge, it is too limited to see the whole thing. But look at what God did. He took something that was a symbol of the worst thing that could have happened to any man in mankind's history and turned it into the greatest thing that has happened in history, period. The cross. He made the worst thing the best thing. The last thing, the first thing. And now people are wearing cross around their neck. They're putting symbols and pictures of cross all up on the walls. They're using crosses. They put it on the highest symbol that represent God or following God or God's way. Churches. They're putting crosses on top of churches. What? The thing that used to be the worst thing that could ever happen in mankind's history, God turned it into the greatest thing that has ever happened in history, period. So let God be the judge. When something that you and I determine to be a bad thing, that does not necessarily make that thing a bad thing. It only shows our limited vision and our limited knowledge. Let God be the judge. Just because we think something is bad to us, it doesn't feel that good to us, or we don't think that it would be that good for us, allow God to be the last one who makes the decision, who determines if we will go that route or not. Because the things that we see as bad, God can turn that thing into the greatest thing that has ever happened in our life. So today, let's make a decision. Let's make a decision to follow God and to follow Him all the way with no turning back, no turning back. You and I, right now, right here, let's make that decision. That means when we follow God, that anything that happens, we are to know and rely on God's promises that anything that happens to us, rather we label it as good or bad, that it is designed to draw us closer and closer to God. Let's trust God today to allow whatever happens to us and through us to be the greatest thing that can happen for us, because God uses all things to draw you and I closer and closer to Him. Today, let's make that decision with no retreat, no turning back, no turning back. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. No turning back. Thank you, and may God be with you. Have a blessed day.